I run away from situations, literally run as fast as I can. A couple hours later, my dad got off work. He came and found me. I was exhausted. It's wild. It's weird to just randomly go into a state of crisis at inappropriate times. It's like 1 second you're like, I'm going to kill myself. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, that was weird, huh? Whew, you guys want some ice cream? But anyway, I got home and my mom she was really nice. She made a cake and she was like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I know you really wanted to go. I'm like, it's okay. Like, my reality's changed now. Like, obviously I wasn't saying that as a kid, but my reality's changed. My perception is different now. I accept this new reality without Peter Piper. So I'm just like winding down. We're watching a show, and then she goes, "Hey, why don't we go Saturday?" And I was like, "All right." And there I was, just back in that headspace. But it was Wednesday, so as you can imagine, the next 2 days were very, very difficult. But we did go, so it was great. Anyway, thank you. That's my story.
Guys, keep it going for Ben. Oh, Peter Piper pizza. No, and thank you for sharing that story, Ben. We keep it real at Chatterbox. What the fuck? We do. But no, I think we like to just, welcome people of all walks of life and experiences just so we can understand and have that perspective ourselves. So I appreciate you sharing that story tonight. All right, guys, my wig is getting really itchy. So I'm really excited to bring up our last storyteller. I have to give a really grand introduction for this person. They started Chatterbox. They are the reason why we are all here tonight. The hostess with the mostess, HBIC, the person that, we all appreciate. Put your hands together for Estevan.
Always with the long intro. Thanks. But, Estevan. It's going to be just Estevan because I am getting a headache and I don't wear wigs, so that was hard. I'm sorry, Sean. That's Sean's wig, by the way. Or should I say Sammie's wig? So this story, my house was haunted at one point, but this story goes back to when I was little. When I was little, my parents used to yell a lot, and not that it was an abusive situation or anything like that. It's just my dad is very stubborn and has a short temper, especially after working all day, and my mom is a very strong Hispanic woman and doesn't take shit, so she will fight you. So anytime that would happen, and growing up, my parents didn't really believe in, any type of mental health diagnosis ever. So anything could be solved by a swift kick in the ass, and that was about it. So I went undiagnosed with anxiety for just until my adulthood when I sought out what I could do for that. So when I was little, my parents would start yelling, I would just fucking disappear. I'd be under my bed in my room just going, counting the minutes until, all right, I can't hear them anymore. I can come out now. Even my asthma growing up, I didn't realize was just it was a sign of a panic attack coming on. And it wasn't until I was an adult and more comfortable with myself that, I just grew out of my asthma. One day, just didn't need my inhaler anymore. But as a kid, anytime I would get nervous, anytime I would be, and that was one thing, they were just like, oh, your seasonal allergies trigger it. Oh, you play a lot of sports, so anytime you're physically exerting yourself, you get it. Well, it was because my dad was my baseball coach, my basketball coach, my soccer coach. If I was playing baseball and I was a pitcher, I would look over and it'd be the catcher, the umpire, and then my dad sitting in the stands just shaking his head what the fuck, bro? And then you would just hear the wheeze, and it was just a staple. My brothers would make fun of me for it. It would get even worse. Just stop it. Anyway, years later, at 18, my parents moved out to Levine. They kept the house. They still owned it. the one that I grew up in. And they invited me to move out there with them while I went to college. So I was like, yeah, that's inconvenient, sure. So I moved out to Levine with them for a few years, and then moved into an apartment with a friend for a couple of years, and then eventually I circled full circle back to the house that I live in now, which is the same house that I grew up in. So the day that I moved back, I'm throwing all my shit into my childhood room that I grew up in, and I moved all of my stuff into the master bedroom. And as I was doing that, I kept getting like these weird nostalgic feelings and flashbacks, and oh my God, this brings back so many memories. But I started to notice that I felt really uncomfortable in the room, my little kid room. And every time I would go in there, it was just like this weighted vest would be put on, and I'd just be like, okay, getting a little uncomfortable. What I realized, too, is that all of my sports trophies growing up were in that room. All of my memorabilia from growing up, every like report card and shit was all in that room. So it was like walking into a time machine of my anxiety. And so after a while, I started to notice little nuanced things about my house. It used to be a game. We would come into my room, whoever was invited over at the time, I'd be like, watch this shit. I would put my keys down on the little nightstand or table next to my door, and then we'd watch a movie or something, and then you would hear the keys jingle a little bit later, and we'd look over and they'd be on like my bathroom sink. And I'd be like, don't know how that shit happens? Happens all the time. Put something down one place, it just moves. And they're like, should you be concerned about that? Probably not. It's probably just my anxiety. I probably just need a swift kick in the ass. It'll be fine. Then I got my first Great Dane. Her name was Morrigan, named her after the chooser of the slain. And then we would be hanging out in my house together, and then she would look at me sometimes and just be content sitting there. And I don't know if you've ever heard a Great Dane growl before, but at first you can't hear it. You can just feel it. You can just feel the rumble. And I would look over at her and I'd be like, why are you spazzing out? And then her eyes would be tracking something above me. And then she'd start barking. And if you've ever heard a Great Dane bark, especially when you're in the same room together, that sucks. So it's loud, it was warning, and she would stand up like ready to fight something. And I'm like, now I'm nervous and I'm yelling at my dog to stop it. I'm like, you're scaring me. And then she would just stop barking and then be like, look around like, all right, everything's okay. And then she would lay back down. And I'm like, you are freaking me the fuck out. My keys are moving. I don't know what's happening. I don't like going in that room. So one day I decided to do something about it, or at least start talking about it. And I started inviting my friends who hadn't either been over yet or who I hadn't told that my house was potentially haunted to yet. I'd be like, hey, walk around my house with me. Let me give you the tour. And then just ask weird questions like, what do you feel in this room? And they'd be like, nervous now. Like, why are we in here? But I invited a friend over who was more just like, he was very spiritually in tune. And even I am just like, this shit is bullshit. Like, I'm just freaking out. There's got to be like some weird magnetism going on with my car keys. And so he comes over, and I was like, let me take you around the house. And like, he walks in the front door, and he's like, whoa, there's something going on downstairs. And I'm like, that sounds like a euphemism. But I was like, no, seriously, I was like, I've always felt comfortable downstairs. Downstairs was always the family areas. We always had the TVs and games and whatever. And we went into the back room of my house that's next to the garage, and he's like, I feel like there's something looking at me. And I'm like, weird, right? Like, I feel like something's watching me too when I'm here. And he's like, but it's different. It feels like it's more like high-spirited. It feels like it's more like looking out for you. It feels like it's more protective. And I was like, yeah, because like this was the family room. This was the happy room. Like, it's where all the toys and shit were. And then we take him upstairs, and he like literally something caught his eye where he looked from one direction and watched something run by, and he's like, what the fuck was that? And I was like, I don't know. That's why you're here. You tell me. And he's like, I feel something very playful. And I was like, when I was a kid, I used to play pranks on literally fucking everybody. So I would either be running back and forth between my parents' room, my brother's room, just hiding shit. And I was like, oh, it's probably karma for, like, just hiding shit and misplacing things. And then I was just like, what do you think of this room? And he walks in and he like takes one step in and then goes, fuck, and like backs out of the room. And I was like, I don't like that. And he's like, whatever's in here doesn't want me here. And I was like, yeah, all right, that makes sense. That tracks. And I was like, this is the room I hid in. Like, this was my room growing up. And he's like, did you have night terrors? And I was like, that's a strange fucking question, but yes. And I was like, I used to have dreams where it felt like I was being shaken awake. I had one dream particularly where I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to sleep in my room for another fucking month because I could have sworn something grabbed my ankle and, like, tugged on me. And I woke up and I was like, nope, screw this shit. Dad, move over. I'm sleeping in your bed. Slept in his bed till I was 11. No, but he was just like, we have to do something about this. And I'm like, that's even weirder. Like, now we're acknowledging that it's a problem and that I'm not necessarily crazy. And he's like, I want you to invite some friends over. We'll make, like, a kind of a party out of it. We'll make it super comfortable. And I'm like, this is weird. How am I going to go up to my friends and, like, hey, you want to come to a ghost party? We're going to have, like, an exorcism, and you're invited. Sure as shit, though, like, most of my friends were like, that sounds awesome. We'll be there. So friends come over one night, and we start drinking. And then we had, like, one night planned, and then that got canceled because the guy who was supposed to be doing the exorcism got shit-faced. And he walked into that room, and, like, for no reason whatsoever, like, he comes flying back out of the room and falls on his ass. And he's like, I felt it push me. And I'm like, you're just really drunk. And he's like, no, man, it expelled me from that room. And I was like, you're full of shit, but whatever. So the next week he comes back, and he's like, all right, let's do this for real. So I have another party, and my friends come over. We put my dog out in the backyard, and it was weird because that day when I got home, it was like I heard a voice in my head. It was like the guardian spirit that was downstairs was just like, taking on the big guy, huh? And I'm like, who the fuck said that? And how do you know this shit? And is it just me? Am I just thinking shit? And it was just like, good luck, man. I'll be here for you. And I'm like, that's comforting, I guess. And then when I was putting my dog outside, she starts growling at me, like, bad idea, bro. Some shit's going down. And I'm like, yeah, I'm nervous. You're probably picking up on that. Okay, get outside. So my friends get there. We have a couple beers. And then this time, he shows up later than everybody else, so he hasn't been drinking. He gets there, and he's like, all right, let's go into the room. He's like, I want somebody you consider, like, I want one of your best friends there in the room with us, and I want somebody who's one of your more skeptical friends to call me on my bullshit. Like, I want somebody to bear witness who just thinks we're all full of shit. And I was like, done. Michael, you're the skeptical piece of shit. Devin, you're, like, my bestie. Like, let's do this. We're ready to go. And then the rest of my friends were either, like, in my room watching from across the hallway or, like, downstairs still partying. So we go into that room, and Daryl hands me this thing of salt, and he's like, I want you to spread a salt line on the doorway. I want you to spread a salt line on the window. There was only one window in this room. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he's like, now I'm going to light some sage. And I was like, this is getting weird. So he does this whole ritual. I can't even repeat what he said, but he says some words, and then he lights the sage. The room starts to fill up with smoke. And then Devin goes, why is the smoke stopping in the doorway? Like, the door was open, but there was a clear, like, wall of smoke at the doorway. And I was like, the AC's not on. Like, I'm trying to explain it away. And Daryl's like, will you just start believing some shit? And I'm like, no, this is weird. I'm freaking out. Then just I was like, oh, fuck. I'm having a panic attack. And I was like, I haven't had this shit in fucking years. And, but I'm not verbalizing any of this. They're just like, what the fuck is that noise? Sounds like a dog's squeaky toy. And I'm just, fine. But I start turning white, and I start sweating. And Michael, standing outside the doorway, is like, yeah, man, it's pretty like cloudy in there, but there's nothing coming out. And